The stars looked different from the celestial nexus. Jake Morrison stood at the observation window, watching ships from 100 different worlds drift past the massive station. Some were sleek and silver. Others looked like living creatures made of metal and light. He still couldn't believe humanity had a seat at this table. The emergency alarm had pulled him from sleep 3 hours ago. Now he walked through corridors filled with aliens who barely noticed him. A tall crystalline being passed by, its body refracting light into rainbow patterns. 2 insect-like creatures clicked their mandibles in conversation. Jake touched the human flag patch on his uniform and kept walking. The council chamber was already full when he arrived. Katie Brooks sat in the human section, her fingers flying across a data tablet. She looked up when Jake approached, her face tired but focused. "What's the situation?" Jake asked, sliding into the seat beside her. "Bad. The Sentinel network went dark 4 hours ago. Nobody can access it." Katie pulled up a hologram showing the Coalition's territory. Red warning lights blinked across thousands of systems. "Without the Sentinel, we have no coordinated defense grid." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Sentinel network was ancient technology, older than any current civilization. It protected Coalition space from external threats, managed defense stations, and coordinated military responses. Without it, they were blind and vulnerable. The council leader, a Vexari named Crystalline Voice, called the session to order. Its voice came through translation devices as a melodic hum. "We face an unprecedented crisis. The Sentinel refuses all communication. Our finest technicians cannot bypass its security protocols." Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species murmured in concern. The Mindari delegation, beings of pure thought who wore mechanical bodies for physical interaction, projected waves of anxiety that Jake could almost feel. A Krell commander stepped forward, its armored body clicking with each movement. "The Ravagers have scout ships at our borders. They know the Sentinel is down. We estimate 72 hours before they attack." Katie leaned toward Jake and whispered, "I've been looking at the error messages the Sentinel is broadcasting. There's something strange about them." "Strange how?" Jake kept his voice low. "The structure, the way the symbols are arranged. It reminds me of something from Earth." She pulled up lines of alien code on her tablet. "See this pattern here? It's similar to ancient language structures I studied in graduate school." Jake frowned. "The Sentinel was built by the architects. They vanished 1,000,000 years ago. What would they have to do with Earth languages?" "I don't know. But linguistic patterns don't lie. There's something familiar in this code." The council continued debating. The Vexari wanted to attempt a forced shutdown and restart. The Mindari suggested trying to communicate telepathically with the AI. The Krell proposed military solutions, preparing for war without the Sentinel's help. Katie stood up. Jake grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" "Something stupid, probably." She stepped into the speaking circle, her voice activating the translation network. "Honored council members, I request permission to examine the Sentinel's communication protocols." The chamber fell silent. Crystalline Voice's body pulsed with what might have been surprise. "You are human. Your species joined us only 50 years ago. What expertise do you offer?" "I'm a linguist. I study how languages develop and change over time. The Sentinel's error messages contain patterns similar to ancient Earth languages. If the architects encountered early humans, they might have incorporated elements of our language into their systems." The Krell commander made a sound like grinding gears. "Impossible. Humans are newcomers to space travel. Your civilization is barely 10,000 years old." "Which is exactly when the architects might have visited Earth," Katie said. "We have legends of sky gods and visitors from the stars. What if they weren't myths?" A Mindari representative projected thoughts into the translation network. "The hypothesis is unlikely but not impossible. The architects traveled widely. If there is even a small chance this human can help, we must allow her to try." Crystalline Voice considered this. Its body shifted through different colors as it thought. Finally it spoke. "Very well. The human linguist may examine the Sentinel's interface. Commander Morrison will accompany her. You have 48 hours. Jake followed Katie out of the chamber. "You really think ancient aliens taught our ancestors their language?" "Not taught, observed, maybe incorporated. Languages evolve naturally, but they also borrow and adapt. If the architects studied early humans, they might have found something interesting in how we communicate." They took a transport pod deep into the station's core. Security checkpoints scanned them multiple times. The Sentinel's primary interface was housed in a heavily shielded chamber that few beings ever entered. The doors opened onto a vast room filled with holographic displays. At the center stood a crystalline pillar 3 stories tall, pulsing with dim light. Error messages scrolled across dozens of screens in languages Jake couldn't read. Katie approached the nearest console and began working. Her fingers moved quickly, pulling up different data streams and comparing them. This is amazing. The base code structure uses principles we don't see in modern programming. Can you understand it? Jake watched the alien symbols flow past. Not yet. But look at this. She isolated a sequence of symbols. These repeat in a pattern. In linguistics, we call that phonetic rhythm. Languages have natural rhythms based on how the mouth and throat produce sounds. This pattern matches rhythms found in Proto-Indo-European languages. Proto what? The ancestor of most European and some Asian languages. It was spoken maybe 6,000 years ago, possibly earlier. Linguists reconstructed it by comparing modern languages and working backward. Jake shook his head. You're saying this alien AI speaks prehistoric human? Not speaks, but its command structure might be based on those linguistic patterns. If I'm right, we need to find the key word or phrase that will make it respond. And if you're wrong? Katie looked at the towering crystalline pillar, its light pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Then in 48 hours, the Ravagers attack and a lot of people die. Jake pulled out his communicator. I'll contact Lisa Grant on the Pathfinder. If there's archaeological evidence of ancient alien contact on Earth, she'll find it. Katie turned back to the console, her eyes scanning lines of alien code. Somewhere in this ancient system, buried in technology 1,000,000 years old, was a connection to humanity's distant past. She just had to find it before time ran out. Katie hadn't slept in 20 hours. Her eyes burned as she stared at another sequence of alien symbols, trying to match them with linguistic patterns from Earth's ancient past. Coffee helped, though the station's synthesizers never got the taste quite right. Jake returned to the interface chamber carrying food containers. You need to eat something. I need to solve this. Katie took the container anyway and ate without tasting it. I've identified 17 distinct pattern matches between the Sentinel's code and Proto-Indo-European root structures. That's too many to be coincidence. Lisa sent through some data. Jake pulled up a hologram from his communicator. They found something interesting in Iraq near the ancient city of Uruk. There's a metal fragment that doesn't match anything from that time period. It's not bronze, not iron. The metallurgical analysis says it's an alloy we didn't develop until the 23rd century. Katie stopped eating. What was it doing in a 5,000-year-old archaeological site? That's what Lisa wants to know. She's running more tests, but the fragment has unusual properties. It doesn't corrode. It maintains a constant temperature regardless of environment, and there are markings on it. What kind of markings? Jake expanded the image. The fragment was small, maybe the size of a coin with symbols etched across its surface. Katie felt her heart race as she recognized the patterns. Those symbols, they're similar to what I'm seeing in the Sentinel's interface. She pulled up her own data and placed it beside the image from Earth. The symbols weren't identical, but the underlying structure matched. The architects were on Earth, they left evidence. Why would ancient aliens visit prehistoric humans? Jake studied the comparison. We had nothing to offer them technologically. Maybe technology wasn't what interested them. Katie stood and paced, her mind racing. The architects traveled across the galaxy. They would have encountered countless species at various stages of development. What if they were studying something else? Culture, language, thought patterns. A message alert blinked on the console. Katie opened it and saw Lisa's face on the screen, calling from the research vessel Pathfinder. Katie, we found something else. Lisa's excitement was clear even through the transmission lag. Cave paintings in France. They've been known for years, but nobody paid attention to one section because it didn't match the style of the other paintings. Look at this. The image showed ancient cave walls covered in paintings of animals and hunters. But in one corner, rendered in a completely different artistic style, were symbols that made Katie gasp. Those are the same patterns from the Sentinel's error messages. Katie touched the screen as if she could reach through and touch the ancient wall. Early humans saw the architects. They tried to record what they witnessed. There's more, Lisa continued. We ran analysis on the paint used for those symbols. It contains trace elements that don't occur naturally in that region. Someone or something provided the materials. Jake crossed his arms. So the architects visited Earth during the Stone Age, gave our ancestors some kind of paint, and impressed them enough to be recorded on cave walls. What does that tell us about cracking the Sentinel's code? It tells us the connection goes deeper than I thought. Katie returned to the console with renewed energy. The architects didn't just observe human language. They interacted with it. Maybe they taught early humans specific sounds or concepts. Those interactions left traces in our linguistic development. She pulled up her reconstruction of Proto-Indo-European phonetics. Modern linguists had spent centuries piecing together how ancient languages sounded based on their descendants. The words themselves were often lost, but the rules that governed them could be traced backward through time. What are you looking for? Jake watched as Katie sorted through thousands of reconstructed words. A command word. Something fundamental. The architects built the Sentinel to last forever, but they also built it to respond to specific inputs. If they keyed those inputs to human language patterns, there must be a reason. Maybe they wanted humans to find it someday. Katie paused. What if you're right? What if this was intentional? A message or a gift, left for us to discover when we were ready. Her communicator beeped. A priority message from the council chamber. Jake opened it and his face went pale. The Ravagers are moving faster than expected. Military intelligence reports a fleet massing at the border. They're not waiting the full 72 hours. How long do we have? Maybe 36 hours before the first attacks. Katie felt the pressure settle over her like a weight. 36 hours to crack a code that had been locked for 1,000,000 years. She looked at the towering crystalline pillar, its light pulsing steadily, indifferent to their panic. I need help, she said suddenly. The Mindari. They can sense patterns in thought and consciousness, right? That's what they claim. Get them down here. If the Sentinel's core architecture is based on human linguistic patterns, maybe they can sense that connection. Jake made the call. 20 minutes later, 3 Mindari representatives arrived, their mechanical bodies moving with eerie grace. They didn't speak aloud, but projected thoughts through the translation network. We sense your distress, human Katie. How may we assist? Katie explained her theory about the Sentinel's linguistic base. The Mindari approached the crystalline pillar, extending sensor arrays from their mechanical frames. For several minutes, they stood silent. Katie watched, barely breathing. Then the lead Mindari turned to face her. Fascinating. The core processing system resonates with what we perceive as primal thought forms, not modern consciousness, but something older. The patterns feel young in the way new life feels young. Raw, unrefined. Human thought patterns, Katie whispered. Yes, from a time when your species was still defining itself. The architecture of this system is built on the foundation of emerging human consciousness and the sounds that consciousness created to understand its world. Jake looked skeptical. How is that possible? Humans weren't even spacefaring. We were barely past using stone tools. The architects were interested in potential, not achievement. The Mindari responded. They saw something in early humans worth preserving, worth encoding into their greatest creations. Katie felt a chill run down her spine. They gave us a legacy, one we didn't even know we had. She turned back to her console with new purpose. Somewhere in the ancient roots of human language was a key, a word or sound that would make the Sentinel recognize humanity as its rightful inheritors. She just had to find it before the Ravagers crossed the border and the killing began. The clock was counting down. Katie could feel it in every heartbeat, every breath. 24 hours left before the Ravagers attacked. 24 hours to unlock a system that had been silent for longer than human civilization had existed. She focused on root words, the most basic building blocks of language. In Proto-Indo-European, every complex word started from simple roots, usually just 1 or 2 syllables. These roots carried fundamental meanings: to be, to go, to see, to know. What about this one? Jake pointed to a reconstruction on the screen. He'd been helping her search for hours, though he admitted he barely understood what they were looking for. Day 1. It means to set, to put, to place. Katie studied the notation carefully. The subscript number indicated a specific sound that didn't exist in modern languages anymore, a laryngeal consonant that linguists could only guess at. Could that be it? Maybe. It's one of the most fundamental roots. It evolved into words about foundation, establishment, creation. In ancient Greek, it became thesis. In Latin, facere. In Sanskrit, dhatu. The concept of making something, putting it in place, establishing order. She pulled up the Sentinel's core command structure, layers upon layers of alien code that her software was slowly translating into patterns she could understand. And there, buried deep in the security protocols, was a structure that matched the phonetic pattern of DH1. This could be it. Her hands shook as she isolated the sequence. The command that tells the Sentinel to establish connection, to put systems in place to create order from chaos. So speak it, Jake said. It's not that simple. The pronunciation has to be exact. If I get the sounds wrong, it won't work, and we're talking about sounds that haven't been spoken by human mouths in 6,000 years, maybe longer. Katie loaded linguistic reconstruction software that modeled how ancient throats and mouths would have produced different sounds. She listened to the computer's best guess at the pronunciation, then tried to mimic it. Teh. The sound came out flat. Modern, wrong. She tried again, adjusting her throat position, trying to produce the laryngeal consonant that linguists marked with subscript numbers. That one better, but still not right. She could hear the difference between what she was producing and what the computer suggested. The ancient sound required a throat position that modern humans didn't naturally use anymore. Jake's communicator buzzed. He checked it and frowned. Military update. The Ravager fleet is now 18 hours from the border. Katie felt panic rising but pushed it down. Panic wouldn't help. She needed focus. She needed to become a bridge between the present and the distant past, to make her modern human throat produce sounds that her ancestors had spoken before writing existed, before cities existed, before agriculture changed everything. A message came through from Lisa on the Pathfinder. Katie, I'm sending you something. Audio files we extracted from the metal fragment. I don't know if they'll help, but we used resonance imaging to map the molecular structure, and there are patterns that might represent sound waves. The files arrived. Katie opened the first one. A strange tone filled the chamber, neither musical nor mechanical, something in between. It made her teeth ache and her skin prickle. What is that? Jake covered his ears. The architect's language, maybe, or at least how they encoded sound. Katie analyzed the waveform. It was complex, layered. But underneath all the alien complexity, she could see patterns that matched human phonetic structures. She isolated a segment that corresponded to the DA1 root pattern and played it again. This time she could hear it more clearly. The laryngeal consonant wasn't just a throat position. It was a resonance, a vibration that occurred below normal speaking tones. Katie practiced for 3 hours. Her throat hurt and her voice grew hoarse, but slowly she got closer to the ancient sound. The Mindari stayed with her, offering feedback on when the thought patterns she generated matched what they sensed from the Sentinel's core. Closer, the lead Mindari projected. The resonance approaches the correct frequency. Jake brought her water and throat lozenges. The council is preparing evacuation protocols. General Mira Cole is moving military assets into position. Everyone's getting ready for war. I can do this, Katie said, though doubt gnawed at her. I just need more time. Time is the one thing we don't have. She practiced more, adjusting her breath control, her tongue position, the resonance in her chest and throat. Ancient humans had spoken this way naturally. She had to trust that somewhere in her DNA, in the structure of her body, was the ability to recreate those sounds. Finally, after another hour of attempts, the Mindari reacted strongly. That pattern, the thought form it generates, matches the Sentinel's core resonance exactly. Katie's voice was barely a whisper from exhaustion, but she'd found it. The exact pronunciation of a word that hadn't been spoken in millennia. Preserved through linguistic reconstruction and alien technology. I need to rest my voice for an hour, she told Jake. Then we try it. They sat together in the chamber, watching the crystalline pillar pulse its steady rhythm. Katie thought about all the humans who had lived and died never knowing that aliens had visited Earth during the Stone Age. Never knowing that those visitors had been impressed enough by early human language to build it into their most sophisticated technology. What if it doesn't work? Jake asked quietly. Then the Ravagers attack and we fight. But it will work. It has to. An hour passed. Katie drank more water, did vocal warm-ups, prepared herself. Outside the chamber, she knew thousands of beings were preparing for the worst. Evacuation ships were being loaded. Defense stations were going to full alert. The coalition was about to face its first major war in 1,000 years. But in this chamber, Everything came down to one human woman and one ancient word. Katie stood before the crystalline pillar. Jake moved to stand beside her. The Mindari formed a circle around them, their mechanical bodies humming softly. "Whenever you're ready," Jake said. Katie took a deep breath. She thought about her ancestors, those early humans who had looked up at strange visitors from the sky and tried to communicate with them. Those humans had no technology, no science, no understanding of the universe beyond their immediate world. But they had language, and they had the uniquely human gift of trying to bridge gaps through words. She opened her mouth and spoke the ancient word, letting it resonate from deep in her chest, shaping the sounds with throat and tongue positions that felt alien and natural at the same time. Dia 1. The sound filled the chamber, echoing off the walls, vibrating through the floor. The crystalline pillar flickered. Katie held her breath. Then slowly the sentinel began to wake. Light exploded from the crystalline pillar, not bright enough to hurt but overwhelming in its sudden presence. The entire chamber lit up like sunrise after a long night. Holographic displays that had been dark for days blazed to life, filling the air with streams of data. Jake grabbed Katie's arm to steady her as the floor vibrated beneath their feet. The Mindari stepped back, their sensors extending to full reach, trying to process what was happening. "Katie, what did you do?" She couldn't answer. She was watching the pillar transform. Patterns of light moved through the crystal like living things racing up and down its length. The error messages that had filled the screens disappeared, replaced by symbols that shifted and changed as she watched them. Then a voice filled the chamber. It didn't come from any speaker. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the walls, from the air itself. The voice spoke in sounds that made Katie's ears ring, but underneath those alien tones she could hear familiar patterns, the rhythms and structures of Proto-Indo-European. "Translation active," her computer announced. The alien sounds began to resolve into words she could understand, though she knew the translation was imperfect, trying to bridge a million years of linguistic evolution. Guardian Unit 7 acknowledges activation command. Identifying source of authentication. Katie's throat was dry. "I am Katie Brooks, human, representative of Earth." Human language pattern confirmed. Genetic markers confirmed. Species designation matches architect database entry for Sol 3 indigenous intelligent life. Recognition protocol initiated. Jake moved closer to Katie. "It recognizes humans?" The Sentinel's voice continued, now with what might have been warmth, though it was hard to tell with an AI that ancient. This unit was constructed with command protocols based on languages of species designated as legacy bearers. Humans of Sol 3 were among species selected by the architects for long-term monitoring and potential inclusion in greater network. Why? Katie found her voice. Why did the architects choose humans? Linguistic creativity index exceeded standard parameters. Cognitive flexibility demonstrated exceptional potential. Social bonding mechanisms showed unique complexity. The architects determined that humans possessed qualities worth preserving in system architecture. The Mindari projected thoughts into the translation network. The architects saw what we see now. Humanity's gift for connection, for building bridges between different forms of thought. Katie felt tears in her eyes but didn't let them fall. "We didn't know. We had no idea you were watching us." Contact was minimal to prevent developmental interference. Small items were left as markers. Language samples were recorded. The architects observed from distance and incorporated human linguistic patterns into core command structures of all Guardian units. All Guardian units? Jake's eyes widened.
How many are there?
73 Guardian units exist within this galactic sector. Each was keyed to a different legacy bearer species encountered by the architects. This unit responded to human authentication because human linguistic patterns were encoded as primary command authority. Katie understood now. The Sentinel hadn't locked down because of malfunction. It had been waiting for humans to reach this point in their development, to join the galactic community, to speak the ancient words it had been programmed to recognize. "The Ravagers," Jake said urgently. "They're about to attack the Coalition. Can you help us?" Defensive network activation proceeding. All systems coming online. The displays showed maps of Coalition space. Red warning indicators began turning green as the Sentinel network reconnected across thousands of light years. Threat assessment confirms hostile fleet massing at sector boundaries. Defensive response authorized. Katie watched as the ancient AI worked. It moved faster than anything she'd ever seen, coordinating defense systems across an area of space larger than human understanding. Weapons platforms that had been silent activated. Shield generators on 1,000 worlds powered up. Warning beacons began broadcasting in every known language. "The Council needs to know about this," Jake said. He activated his communicator, connecting to the Council chamber. "This is Commander Morrison. The Sentinel network is fully operational. I repeat, the Sentinel is online." Crystalline Voice's response came immediately. "Confirmed. We are receiving system data now." "How was this accomplished?" Katie Brooks spoke a word. An ancient human word. The Sentinel recognized it and woke up. There was a pause. Then Crystalline Voice spoke again. And even through translation, Katie could hear something like awe. "The humans are legacy bearers. The Council must convene immediately." Within minutes, military channels filled with activity. General Mira Cole's voice came through, crisp and professional. "All units, this is General Cole. The Sentinel network is operational. Adjust defensive positions based on incoming tactical data. Prepare to intercept hostile fleet." Katie connected her console to the Sentinel's main interface. "Guardian Unit 7, can you tell me about the architects? Why did they leave?" "The architects transcended physical form approximately 1 million standard years ago. They left Guardian units to protect and monitor legacy-bearer species until such species reach sufficient development to inherit architect technology." "We're inheriting it?" Katie's hand shook. "Humanity is supposed to inherit ancient alien technology?" "Affirmative. When legacy-bearer species demonstrate sufficient maturity, they gain access to architect systems and knowledge. Human achievement of galactic community membership and successful authentication of this unit indicates sufficient maturity." Jake laughed, a sound of pure disbelief and joy. "We passed the test. Our Stone Age ancestors impressed aliens so much that they left us an inheritance." The Sentinel continued its work, coordinating with coalition forces. On the displays, Katie watched as the Ravager fleet approached the border and met a defensive network that was fully prepared. What should have been a surprise attack became a standoff. The Ravagers, seeing that their advantage was gone, began to retreat. "Hostile fleet withdrawing," the Sentinel reported. "Coalition space secure." Cheers erupted across every military channel. The crisis was over, but Katie understood that something much bigger had just begun. "Guardian Unit 7, what happens now?" she asked. "This unit will continue primary functions. Additionally, this unit will provide access codes for other Guardian units in this sector. Each legacy-bearer species must authenticate their own Guardian units, using their specific linguistic keys. Human Katie Brooks is authorized to coordinate this process." "Me? Why me?" "You spoke the ancient words. You demonstrated understanding of human linguistic heritage. You are bridge between past and future. This is the role the architects intended for legacy bearers." Katie looked at Jake, who shrugged with a smile. "Looks like you just got promoted." The Mindari approached, their mechanical bodies reflecting the pillar's light. "This changes everything for the galactic community. Humanity is not a newcomer species. You are inheritors of the architect's legacy, equal to any species in the coalition." "More than equal," the Sentinel added. "Humans are primary legacy bearers in this sector. Other species were recorded and studied, but human linguistic patterns were selected as command authority. This indicates the architects saw exceptional potential." Katie thought about all those ancient humans, living their lives in caves and forests, never knowing that visitors from the stars were watching them, learning from them, deciding that the sounds they made and the thoughts they formed were worth preserving forever. "We need to tell Earth," she said. "Everyone needs to know what we've discovered." Jake was already composing the message. "This is going to change human history. Everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe just got rewritten." The Sentinel's light pulsed steadily, now warm and welcoming instead of cold and distant. Katie placed her hand on the crystalline surface and felt a vibration, almost like a heartbeat. An ancient AI built by beings who had transcended physical existence, responding to the voice of a species they had watched grow from its earliest days. One word had done this. One ancient word, preserved through time and reconstruction, spoken by a human who understood the power of language across millennia. And the AI had obeyed instantly, just as it was designed to do. 3 days after the Sentinel awakened, the Galactic Coalition held a ceremony unlike any in its history. The council chamber was filled to capacity. with representatives from every member species and observers from dozens more. News of humanity's recognition as legacy bearers had spread across Coalition space at the speed of light. Katie stood at the center of the chamber, feeling incredibly small despite the attention focused on her. She wore her formal uniform, the one she never thought she'd need. Jake stood beside her along with Lisa, who had arrived from the Pathfinder just hours before. Crystalline Voice's body shimmered with colors that indicated deep respect. We gathered to formally acknowledge a truth the architects knew long before any current civilization existed. Humanity is not a newcomer to the galactic community. They are inheritors of architect legacy, chosen for qualities recognized 1,000,000 years ago. The Vexari diplomat continued. The Coalition offers humanity full status as legacy bearers, with all rights and responsibilities that designation carries. We also formally apologize for our initial dismissal of human capability. Katie felt Jake nudge her. She stepped forward, her voice carrying through the translation network. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we accept this recognition with humility and gratitude. We didn't know about the architect's interest in our species. We're still learning what it means to be legacy bearers. A Krell commander, the same one who had been skeptical before, made a gesture of respect that looked uncomfortable on its armored body. Humans have proven their worth not through military might, but through knowledge and understanding. This is a lesson we will remember. The ceremony continued with formal declarations and exchanges of diplomatic gifts, but Katie's mind was elsewhere, thinking about what came next. The Sentinel had given her access codes for other Guardian units. Each one was keyed to a different species, using linguistic patterns unique to their development. After the ceremony, General Mira Cole approached. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Commander Brooks, that's your new rank, by the way. Congratulations. Thank you, General. I need you for a mission. We're organizing expeditions to locate other Guardian units. The Sentinel provided coordinates for 17 units in nearby sectors. Some of those legacy bearer species are extinct. Some never developed space travel. Some joined the Coalition but never triggered their Guardian units because they didn't know about them. You want me to help activate them? Katie asked. I want you to lead the effort. You understand what we're dealing with better than anyone, and the Sentinel specifically designated you as primary coordinator. Katie looked at Jake, who grinned. I already volunteered. They're giving me a ship. The Horizon. Fast Explorer-class vessel with full science capabilities. And I'm coming too, Lisa added. Someone needs to handle the archaeology side. If the architects left markers for other species like they did for humans, we need to find them. Katie felt excitement building despite her exhaustion. When do we leave? 2 weeks. That gives you time to train a team and prepare. The Council is very interested in finding other legacy bearer species. It could change the balance of power in the galaxy. The General left them to discuss details. Katie, Jake, and Lisa found a quiet observation deck and looked out at the stars. This is really happening, Lisa said. We're going to explore architect sites across the galaxy. It's what they wanted, Katie replied. The architects didn't just leave technology behind. They left a mystery for us to solve. A puzzle that requires multiple species working together. Jake pointed to a cluster of stars. The nearest Guardian unit is in that direction, 10 light years from here. The species that was supposed to inherit it went extinct about 50,000 years ago. What happens to orphaned Guardian units? Lisa asked. According to the Sentinel, they remain dormant until another legacy bearer species activates them. The technology doesn't belong to any one species. It belongs to all of us collectively. Katie thought about that. The architects had seen something in humans worth preserving, but they'd seen it in other species too. Each unique, each valuable in its own way. The network they created was meant to bring those species together, to create something greater than any single civilization could achieve alone. Over the next 2 weeks, Katie assembled her team. Linguists from Earth who specialized in different language families. Xenolinguists who studied alien communication patterns. Computer scientists who could interface with ancient technology. And representatives from several Coalition species who wanted to help locate their own Guardian units. The Horizon was a beautiful ship, sleek and fast, built by the Vexari with input from human engineers. It had quarters for 50 people, laboratories equipped with cutting-edge equipment, and engines that could cross vast distances in days rather than weeks. On the day of departure, Katie stood on the bridge with Jake at the helm. Lisa was in the main laboratory, already cataloging data from the Sentinel. The crew moved efficiently through pre-flight checks. All systems ready, Jake reported. Course set for Guardian Unit 17. Take us out, Katie said, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders. The horizon pulled away from the celestial nexus and accelerated toward the stars. Behind them, Coalition space was secure, protected by the Sentinel network that humanity had awakened. Ahead lay mysteries that had waited 1,000,000 years to be solved. Katie pulled up the data on Guardian Unit 17. It had been built for a species called the Singers, whose language was entirely musical. They had lived on a world with an atmosphere that carried sound differently than Earth's, and they had developed complex tonal patterns to communicate. How are we supposed to activate a unit keyed to music? Lisa asked over the comm system. Same way we activated the Sentinel. By understanding the underlying patterns and reconstructing them. Katie smiled. Good thing we brought a xenomusicologist. The journey took 4 days. They used the time to study everything known about the Singers. They'd been a peaceful species, notable for their art and philosophy. Climate change had wiped them out before they developed space travel, leaving behind ruins and recordings of their beautiful, haunting songs. When the horizon arrived at the coordinates, they found an asteroid field orbiting a dim red star. Deep within the largest asteroid was the Guardian Unit, exactly where the Sentinel said it would be. The away team included Katie, Lisa, and a Mindari representative named Thoughtwalker. They took a shuttle into the asteroid and found a chamber similar to the one on the Celestial Nexus. Though smaller, the crystalline pillar was dark and cold. The Singers never made it this far, Lisa said sadly, examining ancient tool marks on the asteroid walls. They tried mining this asteroid thousands of years ago, but they died out before they could dig deep enough to find their inheritance. Katie approached the pillar and touched it. Nothing happened. She pulled up the activation sequence the Sentinel had provided, a complex musical pattern that would serve as the authentication key. Thoughtwalker, can you sense anything? The Mindari extended its sensors. Dormant consciousness, waiting. The pattern it seeks is clear. You must reproduce the Singer's linguistic key with precision. Katie activated the holographic display on her portable computer. The musical pattern appeared as a waveform, incredibly complex and beautiful. She had practiced for days, but actually producing it would be different. She took a breath and began to sing. Her voice carried the melody, strange and otherworldly, rising and falling in patterns that felt alien on her human tongue. The chamber acoustics amplified the sound, and she could hear it echoing back to her in layers. The pillar flickered. Katie continued, hitting notes she'd never attempted before, letting the music flow through her. She thought about the Singers, their lost civilization, their language of pure music. She sang for them, a bridge between their past and this moment. Light bloomed in the crystal. Guardian Unit 17 awakened. This unit acknowledges activation, the AI announced. Singer linguistic pattern not detected. Alternate legacy bearer authentication accepted. Identifying source. Human, Katie said. We're speaking for the Singers. They're gone, but we want to honor them by activating their Guardian Unit. Singer species extinction confirmed in database. Legacy transfer protocol initiated. Guardian Unit 17 operational under Coalition authority. This unit thanks the humans for completing the Singer legacy. Katie felt tears on her cheeks. We'll make sure your creators are remembered. I promise. They spent 2 days at the site, documenting everything and establishing a link between Guardian Unit 17 and the Sentinel network. When they returned to the horizon, Katie felt different, changed. 16 more Guardian units to find, Jake said from the pilot's seat. And then what? Lisa asked. Katie looked at the stars streaming past the viewports. Then we find the others. Every legacy bearer species the architects identified. And we build the network they imagined. A galaxy where different species work together, each bringing their unique gifts. Sounds like a lot of work, Jake said with a smile. The best kind of work. Katie pulled up the coordinates for the next Guardian unit. Set course for the Chorus system. The next legacy bearer species is still alive, and they have no idea what's waiting for them.